Are you looking for the best OBS recording settings for 720p at 30 frames per second and 60 frames per second? If so, stay tuned. What is going on, guys? Chad here from How To Tech, the channel dedicated to helping you take your tech to the next level. And in this video, we're going to be breaking down the best recording settings for Streamlabs OBS at 720p, 30 frames per second, and 60 frames per second. Let's get into it. All right, so before we get started, I want to go ahead and preface this video with saying I am using Streamlabs OBS. There are multiple different versions of OBS because it is what's called open source software. So anybody can get a hold of it and kind of change it and tune it a little bit. So there's stuff like Stream Elements, Streamlabs OBS, OBS Studio, and just regular OBS from back in the day. So if you are using a different version, some of these settings might be a little bit different, or if you have Streamlabs OBS at a different version number, which I'm currently on 0.19.4, your settings might look a little bit different. So I just wanted to head and preface that in this intro segment part of the video, just to let you know before we get started. All right, so now that we've got that all out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about the settings that you need to set. So to get there, we need to click on the settings gear in the bottom left-hand corner, and it will pop up this lovely window. And in this window, we are going to go to the video tab. And this is where we set our video settings. So our canvas is what our monitor is currently set to. Our monitor is 1920 by 1080. And what we want to do is we want to set our output scaled resolution to 720p because we are recording at 720p. So we set that to 720p with a downscale filter of bicubic. If this doesn't work for you, you could do bilinear, which is the fastest, but that has less impact on your computer. But typically bicubic works for most people. Your FPS type needs to be common FPS values, and this is where we see our two differs here is in the FPS values is for 60 FPS, we obviously want to select 60, and if you want to do 30 FPS, select 30. So I'm going to go ahead and select 60 just for the sake of this video. We are not going to be messing with the general or the stream tab, so we're going to jump over to output, and we are going to make sure advanced mode is selected. In my previous video where I talked about the best stream settings for 480p, 720p, and 1080p, we use simple, but for recording we want a little more control, so we're going to use advanced. And after we select advanced, we're going to want to select the recording tab. Once in the recording tab, we're going to want to make sure that type is set to standard and select our recording path of where we want our videos saved. So go ahead and click browse and figure out where you want to save your videos. A lot of people like saving them to their videos folder, and some people might have a recordings folder specifically. So figure out where that's at and go ahead and select that folder. We are not going to worry about generating file names without space. This just adds space to the file name whenever it saves. And the next thing that we're going to want to look at is recording format. So by default, FLV is selected. We're going to select MP4. FLV is nice in some cases, but for what we're doing and we're just wanting to get a basic video recorded, we're going to go with MP4. And the reason why I suggest that MP4 is compatible with more video editing programs, so if you need to edit the video, it's very easy to use. Also, with MP4, if you are interested, I could possibly make a video on multitrack audio recording. I've made one in the past, but I can make a more advanced, updated one for, updated times, that is. So you could actually select how many audio tracks you wanted. So if you wanted to record your video and have separate audio for your microphone, your friend's Discord, and your desktop, you can do that and then adjust them independently in your video editing program. Next is the recording. You can use the stream encoding, which is the same right here. So it actually pulls from these settings, but we don't want to use that. We want to use software X.2 or X264. If you have the option to use NVIDIA NVE Sync, I suggest using it, and the reason why is because it uses your graphics card to do the processing power, and if your graphics card is new enough, it should work well. And then there's also NVE Sync New, so if you have the access to NVE Sync New, use it. If not, you don't have access to either one, just use software X264. We're going to leave Rescale Output unchecked, and Custom Muxer settings, we're going to leave that blank as well. Rate control is something that you can change. You can use variable bitrate. I really don't suggest it whenever recording unless you really need small video file sizes. So I would select constant bitrate. And this is where the settings are going to differ quite a bit from 720p 30 frames per second and 720p 60 frames per second. So if you're recording 720p and you are looking in the ballpark of 30 frames per second, you think your computer can handle that well, we're going to start at the low end of what's 5 megabytes per second, which is right here, it's actually showing it in the form of kilobits per second. So we didn't need to actually convert that. So 5 megabytes per second is actually 5,000 kilobits per second. So that is kind of the low end for 720p 30 frames per second. If you wanted the high end for 720p 30 frames per second, that would be more like 6.5 megabytes per second, which is 6,500 kilobits per second. So this right here would be what you would want to use on the high end. So anywhere from 5,000 to 6,500 for the bit rate for 720p 30 frames per second. If you are wanting to record at 720p 60 frames per second, however, this bitrate actually changes quite a bit. So on the low end, we're going to be looking at 7,500 kilobits per second or 7.5 megabytes per second. And then on the high end, we're going to be looking closer to 9,500 kilobits per second or 9.5 megabytes per second. We are going to leave unchecked use custom buffer size, and keyframe intervals are going to stay at 0 as well. Our CPU usage preset is actually going to be set to very fast. I do not suggest changing this unless you have a good processor. If you have a really, really good computer with a good processor, you can actually turn it down farther here. What this basically means is it's going to spend more time working on encoding your video, making the encoding look the best possible. If you have a really bad processor, you might actually jump it up to super fast or ultra fast, but if you do that, you will see a decrease in the quality of the video. Profile, we are going to set to main. This is basically telling your computer that this is a priority for you, and whenever you're recording that you want to make sure there's enough system properties and stuff allocated for Streamlabs OBS. The last thing you're going to want to do is click on the settings gear by the audio mixer. This is going to give you the advanced audio tab. And like we looked in the settings earlier, we actually saw where there were multiple audio tracks that you could record to if you were using the MP4 format. The main thing you're going to want to select is make sure whichever audio track or line that you selected to record to is selected here. So for example, if one was unselected, we had one selected in the settings, that means no audio would ever be recorded. So make sure those are checked. Once again, if you guys are interested in seeing a more advanced video broken down on how to record, say, the desktop audio and your microphone on separate audio tracks so you can adjust them independently, let me know in the description, or I mean the comment section actually, down below. So all right, that's gonna be all for this video. If you guys enjoyed, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If this video helped you, make sure to let us know in the comment section down below as well. This has been Chad from How To Tech, the channel dedicated to helping you take your tech to the next level, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.